And hello everybody! It's time again to have a little sketchbook exercise. Today I want to go back to some character creation roots again, which is silhouette drawing. Just going back to drawing figures and poses in a tiny format, filling up a whole page just by drawing them in shapes. So there will be no real construction, no focus on anatomy and stuff, just the basic forms. For those of you who have little to no experience at all in drawing, I'm going to make a little introduction now so that you can participate and practice with us. Because really what it is, you have to think of it as a stick figure exercise, but with a little bit more mass on it. So it's really not that difficult in the core concept. So I think this is something everybody can do. If you are already more experienced, you can of course skip the little introduction and just come directly with me in the time-lapse video and get inspired to do this silhouette exercise yourself. Okay, so last time I had a few people telling me that my volume was quite low on the video, and I was already on the max of my editing program. So this time I put a little enhancer on the microphone, hoping that I will have more volume on this one so that it's easier to listen to when you don't use headphones. And also because sometimes I think you can hear the background noise of the ventilation of my laptop, I put a filter to get the noise out, the background noise. Anyway, let's start this. You can give me feedback on the audio quality if anything changed for you. I always try to get better at this. So for those who don't have experience in drawing at all or have just a little experience, you can think of this exercise really as like a stick figure exercise. So if you would draw a stick figure, you know, you have your head, you have your body, your arms, and your legs. That's more or less how you would draw your stick figure. And we're going to work in roughly this size. So we're going to work in a small thumbnail-like size. Now, don't get intimidated. I don't want you to think of what you have to draw as really as bodies and thinking of anatomy, but you can think of it as more like stick figures with a little bit more mass to it. So what you need is your head. You can also fill it in because we're working with silhouettes. You have your shoulders. You have a body with a mass. You have your legs. Tiny feet. Your arms. And your hands. So I know it is a little bit more complicated than a simple stick figure. So going from this to this, if you are really new to drawing and you're an absolute beginner, this is already very difficult. But I think everybody can get this if you don't think of it as really like a body, but more a stick figure with mass or with shapes. So you can really think like upper bodies are more like shoulders. You have your torso. And somewhere you get your hips. And legs, you can think of them as, well, let's say triangular shapes that are fit on there. So you have shapes like this. You have somewhere you have your knee. And again, for the other leg, it's more or less like a shape like this. You can also bend these into another position. If you have your lower leg from the side, for example, you have to think that it is flat on the front and still again, same shape on the back. Also feet. You have the back side of your foot, you have the slope, and somewhere there your toes. Same thing with arms. It's more like a shape that also goes thinner as you are closer to the elbow. You have your elbow, and you have your arm. So you can really think of this as easy shapes like that to get a figure like this. And the smaller you draw this, the easier it is. Plus, as we are doing this as a silhouette exercise, it is really simple to find your shapes when you fill them in. So for example, I would make a body like this. And then I would realize, okay, I want my figure to have broader shoulders. If you work with outlines, this would look like that, and I would have to put it onto the outlines. But in this case, I can just add mass until I am happy with my shoulders, how thick, how wide they are. So really just think of the shapes and of the mass and not so much about outlines. This is why this is a really neat exercise. Giving him a stick here. So this is really why it is a neat exercise as well for beginners, because you just have to think of the stick figure and give it mass. So this is it for the tiny introduction for beginners. Let's go now to the time lapse and fill up one page of our sketchbook with simple shapes, figures, posing in a variety of poses. The only goal is to fill up your page, and the longer you do this, the more creative you get, the more expressive you get, the further you might push your poses. Alright, so here we are at the time-lapse video of this exercise, and I want to point out one thing, which is that I decided, even though I'm working with pencil currently, I decided to not use an eraser. So everything I put on the paper is on the paper, stays on the paper, and when I make a mistake, I just try to redo the same pose with a different figure. And I can tell you, not everything I do on here is good, I think. And as I have already finished the exercise while I'm doing this voiceover, I can tell you that I have not really one figure that stands out as perfect or really excellent, but this is not the goal of this exercise. It's simply to do stuff. So I have a lot of figures where I'm happy with the outcome. I think they are okay, or sometimes I think they are good, but there are a lot of poses where I tried something and it didn't work. So either I messed up the silhouette so that I had in my head the idea of posing, and I thought, yeah, this will work, but while drawing it, I realized that the silhouette was not clear enough, or yeah, it simply did not work the way I imagined it to work. So sometimes I redid the same pose, and sometimes I simply forfeited the idea. Another great tip to do this is, if you run out of poses to do, simply give your character a prop. Like many of my figures have swords or weapons or sticks. There's one figure throwing a ball. If you're really just working with your figure and putting your figure into poses without props, you are kind of limited of what amount of poses you can do. So for example, I even started my first figure with a sword or with a saber, because doing fencing positions is something that's comfortable with me, and always the hardest part of art is to simply start and get you going. And you can also see, the longer I do this, the more I get into experimenting with stuff. So I made a centaur, which I think turned out pretty cool. I tried a little devil demon figure, I tried an angel, although I'm really not happy with the angel, and I also tried to make one figure with an armor. So that's also something you can do if you get comfortable with this exercise, is simply changing the shape of your figure. So giving it a little bit more body mass or less, give it wider shoulders, make it very thin, make it very heavy. So you can play around however you like. And I think the longer you do this, the more you are open to trying more expressive poses. Now the last few poses at the end of this exercise, I realized that I did not have a lot of sitting persons, so I also did some of these. So yeah, sitting poses are for me quite heavy and difficult to get in a really good silhouette. So the more you can clearly show arms or legs, the easier it is to get a good silhouette. Anyway, this was a fun exercise. I realized that I have to do this much more, so it's a skill I once was very competent at when I was studying animation, but somehow I lost it a little bit. So repetition and redoing and, well, always going back to the basics is what is really important. As I always say, sometimes you get so lost in making big artworks that you simply forget the basic stuff, which is necessary to do good art. I hope you like this little lesson and that I will see you next time. Bye!